Welcome back to the latest episode of the CGA Tour podcast. As always, here I'm your host, Calvin Glenn Alexander. And today's podcast is a very special episode. I'm bringing on former Oklahoma State wide receiver David Glidden here on the podcast. And hopefully I pronounced his name better, or at least a little bit better, than former NFL QB Matt Ryan.
Glidden.
The CGA Tour, a podcast unlike any other. Now your host, Calvin Alexander.
Hey Cowboy fans, today's episode is brought to you by Oakley Burklow, your go-to independent insurance agent and proud OSU alum. Oakley helps with home, auto, life, and business insurance, working with multiple top-rated insurance companies to find you the right coverage at the right price. Licensed in Oklahoma and Arkansas. Call 918-280-9068 or email oakley.burklow@connectmyinsurance.com. Personal service, honest advice, and a fellow poke helping you protect what matters most.
Well, welcome on to the podcast here. David, thanks so much for joining here. Thanks so much for taking the time. Really appreciate having you on.
Yeah, Cal, appreciate it, man. That's a heck of an intro you got there. That's big
thanks.
time, man.
I got a little bit of the media school, kind of memory still of how to work Final Cut and everything. So thank you. I spent a little bit of time with that. But, want to get into today, of course, like your favorite memories playing for Oklahoma State, your recruiting stories, what you're up to today, and of course, the Huddle Up podcast that you're doing now as well. Weekly, bringing on former NFL great and Super Bowl champion Charlie Johnson. So that podcast has already been put out by the time you listen to this one. But yeah, I just want to ask, you went to Mustang, you're a local Oklahoma. Did you grow up an Oklahoma State fan?
Yeah, man, for sure. My whole family is kind of bleeds orange, if you will. So, in a state where we're pretty outnumbered from the other side. It was like one of those things as a kid where I just felt like I was the only one sometimes. They had me and a couple of the buddies that were OSU guys, but now the way things have come full circle in life, I realize it was all for a reason. All right, it was all for a reason. So man, I grew up a Polk fan just because of the roots of my family and everything. So and obviously, and I'm proud of it for sure. I bleed orange.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. I was one of the few kids in middle school growing up in Oklahoma City and elementary school wearing orange every day and getting told what the Bedlam score was. And I was hanging on to 02 and 03, and now I'm hanging on to the final one, which is always a great one. But I want to ask you Oklahoma State put out that you were recruited by several different schools. Kind of how was the recruiting process with Oklahoma State, and how did it compare to other schools recruiting you at the time?
Yeah, it's crazy. I say, after being in, college coaching now for however many years that it's been myself, and now looking back on what recruiting was then to what it is now and everything, I always say this, like, when I look back on it, I had no idea what recruiting really was. Even at that time, obviously it doesn't even come close to what it is now with all the social media stuff and the whole shebang as far as that goes. But my story, honestly, man, was nothing very special. It was pretty simple. I was just busy playing all the sports I could in high school: basketball, baseball, football, ran a little track. And so, I was just nonstop. And so the recruiting process just never, really hit me that much. And I honestly, early on in the stages of high school, I didn't really think about playing football at the next level. I kind of always thought I was going to play baseball, but I loved basketball the most. And so it was kind of like a weird mix of everything. And then here comes football, because I didn't play football my freshman year. And so, it was kind of a whirlwind for me as far as when the recruiting picked up. But at the same time, it was really still just like completely over my head. So, it was nothing special in the fact that their coaches called my coaches one day, my high school coaches, and, asked me to come up to a junior day. I came up to the junior day, and I think that was probably end of January of my junior year. So I'd already played my junior season. Left that day with an offer that I had no idea was coming. And I think I committed like 2 or 3 days later, and the rest was history. So yeah, I was hearing from other schools, and it really picked up towards the end of my junior year for sure. Texas Tech of the world was probably one of the bigger ones and all that stuff. But the biggest blessing for me was that Dana Holgorsen came to Oklahoma State, and he brought that system. And we obviously kept main pieces of that system for quite a while. And so when he came and used slot guys like myself, I was just I was a beneficiary of that. That's for sure. We could just say that. So the fact that I grew up an Oklahoma State fan, got that opportunity for me was, it was a no-brainer, if you will, when it happened. So even to this day, I say, like, me committing, I really didn't even know what I was signing up for or what that meant that I was committing, just because, again, it was all so far over my head. But it was a huge blessing. It still is. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to this day.
Yeah, well, I got to say, you were I think you were my youngest brother, who's now 19 and in college, and he's an NCAA athlete himself. I think you were his favorite player by far and away, because you met so many of the same kind of archetypes that he was going after. Just a really great athlete, a really hard worker, and a guy who was maybe a little bit undersized, but just could beat everyone off of just pure speed sometimes there. I mean, you were the Oklahoma Gatorade Player of the Year, so not to give you too many props or make you feel too even to the life. You had no idea that you were going to get an offer for Oklahoma State, or just kind of did it happen really quickly? Or was Coach Dunn involved in the process at all? Or was that mostly Holgerson, or what kind of happened with that?
Well, once I got up there for that junior day, everybody had played their part. But and to be honest, the Gatorade Player of the Year thing, that happened my senior year. And so, even when that happened, that was kind of it was like, whoa. Again, very fortunate for that award to have came, but definitely to this day when I look back, I'm like, I still have no idea how that even came about, like with some of the other guys that were playing football that year in Oklahoma. So very blessed and fortunate, man, for that. But that was actually kind of after the fact of the recruiting process. And so, like I mentioned, that day I went up there for the junior day. Yeah, it was Coach Holgerson, it was Coach Meacham, it was Coach Gundy, and Coach Brewer at the time was still there. So it was kind of an all hands on deck there at that time that day. And then when I left with an offer that day, it was, constant communication, mainly from a little bit of Dana and a little bit of Gunner, and then Coach Meacham, and then Coach Gundy always did his checkups. And they ended up the next year, they were coming to basketball games, it came to football games and the whole thing, before I signed, then Coach Gundy, he came and did his in-house visit and the whole thing. So, it was, I would say it was a little bit of all hands on deck for sure, but it wasn't, I promise you, I was probably one of the easier recruits they've ever got. Just the fact of what my genetics were, if you will, the fact of growing up an Oklahoma State fan. So it was easy.
It makes sense a lot there for sure. Well, playing for Oklahoma State, can you talk us through some of your favorite memories, maybe favorite memory working out with the wide receiver groups or whatever that was? 'Cause, wide receiver class at the time you were there, of course, was just stacked. It always seemed like it was, but, was definitely talented when you were there too.
Yeah, to be in a room with some of those guys and even the guys that were on the wall in there was just, to me, sometimes it absolutely blew my mind. Kind of a pinch yourself type of moment every day. Especially when I was younger in the room and trying to figure things out and learn. And then obviously that goes away eventually a little bit when you're in there, because then you're just working your tail off every day. Right. So, the memories, some of my favorite memories, to be honest with you, as far as with those guys, don't really have much to do with, actual, like, in between the white lines. It was all like those moments of grinding together, when you're running stadiums and you're going through the off-season workouts and the summer workouts, and building those relationships with those guys that's like, it's the locker room type of stuff that's the most fun and most memorable for me. So, I could probably sit on here and tell you stories of things off the field for the rest of this entire day, and it wouldn't be enough time to go back through some of those favorite things. But with that group specifically, man, it was just, the locker room camaraderie, if you will. And over time, when you work as hard as you do in a Division I college football program in the off season and fall camp and spring practices and those things, like when you're going through something like that with a group of men, and have that in common where really nobody else outside of those walls understands what that's like at that time, you create a special bond. So for me, those were the things, and still having relationships with some of those guys. Heck, I just called James Washington on the phone within the last week, I think, and we talked. So being able to do that is awesome. I can't say me and James stay in touch, like we don't talk all the time by any means, but to know that I just call him and he picks up the phone, that's, to me, is really special because everybody knows how great James is as a player, but he was a much, much better human being at the end of the day. So that's one of the coolest things about him. And it was the same situation with the rest of those guys.
Well, I mean, you were there, in 2011, I know you're redshirted, but of course, you got the Justin Blackmon year where he really comes onto the scene. There with James Washington when he wins Blendikoff Awards, plural. So what do you think stood out with those two guys and made them kind of differentiate themselves versus the rest of the wide receiver group or versus other wide receivers you've seen? Was there anything in particular? Was it just kind of God-given abilities, talent, the hard work, put it all together? What was it?
Yeah, everybody has their own special combination of what makes them special, right? With Black, it was man, with that dude. So my first year I come in, and again, it's eye-opening. I'm seeing when you're a freshman going into a college program, especially back then when it was all about development, and that's what Oklahoma State built their program on, right? And so nowadays, it's a little different from that aspect, just with the way that the whole dynamics of college football has changed in general. But for me to see the way that Justin Blackmon worked from the moment I got there, because it happened then, summer workouts, and then you go straight in the fall camp, and then obviously season happens, and you're into a full swing of it. And it's just as a freshman, it's kind of just like drinking from a fire hose, right? It's all at one time, and you go from summer workouts, you think you complete that, and you think you're good, you made it, and then fall camp hits you, and it's it's a whole new world. And so, but for me to be able to witness all those guys, and especially Justin Blackmon and the way he would work, I think you could probably ask a lot of coaches around there at that place that there's not, if anybody, that outworked him, especially on the practice field, in the weight room. When it came time to strap it up, he was all business, man. And you can tell how much he liked to compete, and he was just kind of wired differently from that aspect of every day at practice. Every rep he took was full speed, no reps off, all the stuff. So that was one of the biggest gifts I think he had as a player, for sure. He was super talented, but his work ethic was crazy. And then James had you mentioned all those traits. James had just a unique combination of all that, man. His humbleness and his natural God-given ability, plus his ability to take coaching and apply it, which is a really, really big deal that I think gets overlooked in a lot of athletes growing up these days. Because obviously he had a great coach in Kasey Dunn, and who had an eye for kind of raw talent, if you will, like James was. So, man, he's to this day probably one of the best just natural ball skill guys I've ever seen, and he can obviously run like a deer. So when you mix that with the attitude of gratitude, I guess, if you will, like James has, you're going to end up having something that's probably a pretty good product. And he just happened to put it all together and truly ran with it in the end. So, because those are, he had a lot of the physical traits, obviously, but his mental makeup was really good. And so I'd say that was kind of the difference in both of those guys, was the way they were wired was just different, and both kind of from different aspects, if you will. But it was special being in a room with those guys, for sure.
Yeah, well, tell me one of your favorite memories about being coached by, any of the coaches in particular. Of course, Kasey Dunn's the one that comes to mind, because he seemingly just put that wide receiver room together every year and just would blossom out a new guy, whether it be Washington or Tylan Wallace or whoever, or yourself, for that matter, right? So it seems like always somebody came out way ahead of that recruiting scouting profile. But what's your favorite memory of kind of being coached by Dunn?
Well, for me, so we actually got there at the same time. He was 2011 was his first year. 2011 was my first year. But at the time, the way things were set up in our system, we were in separate rooms. We had an outside receiver room, and we had an inside/tight end room. And so, and then I think it was after my second year, so my last 3 years, we joined them together, the inside receivers and the outside receivers, and then tight ends were separate. So for me, it was a little different that, he was still my coach technically, obviously as one of my coaches in the first couple of years. But when I switched over and we all went into one room, everybody was under his wing, if you will, that's when it truly changed. So for me, one of my favorite memories is just kind of the, Coach Dunn he has a sternness about him, if you will. And early on in his career, guys gave the nickname of General Dunn to Coach Dunn. And so just because he got to Oklahoma State, that dude there was no playing around. You know what I mean? He was on point of all the details, and he didn't take no crap and blah, 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 all the stuff. So for me, when I switched into that room, I remember feeling like my initial, just gut feeling was a little uneasy, because I'm like, man, I don't know how this is going to go. I know this guy, but do I really, really know him? And now I'm about to go into a room and really learn him. And I see him coach the other guys very, very stern. And that all just happens on the field. Well, eventually, when I get into that room, and I'm like, I kind of call the other dudes crazy. I was like, that's not anything like what y'all were making him out to be at all. So, not to say he went soft or anything like that, but, for me, one of the biggest memories, and him and I go way back now, we still keep in touch often. He's a great guy and a huge mentor for me as a coach as well. And so I credit so much of what I learned in the game of football, and specifically as a receiver, to him. And there's a lot of people I know that know him as one of the best receiver coaches to really ever coach in college football. I mean, that's probably a pretty high standard of some guys, but he's got to be up there for what he did just in his time at Oklahoma State alone. So my just a memory of him would just be the initial feeling of the nerves I had going into that room. But I can't pinpoint anything after that, because there was a lot of moments we had together, and some of the best ones were even outside of football, if you will. Hell, having him on our podcast last week now might be one of my new favorite memories of him, because I have people telling me all the time that, they loved having him on there, and just some of the stuff he was saying, he was rolling. So, man, it was great stuff. And, I'm super grateful for him and my relationship with him for sure.
Yeah, definitely that character part about you saying he's like straightforward to the point, but, kind of a hardcore guy came through on that podcast for sure. Just how he's talking about everything. More about your kind of, favorite game that you played in. I mean, I know you have several great games. You have a 99-yard game at one point. I think in 2014, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it was your high in that season against Baylor, but it was your favorite game you played in.
Man, that's tough. As growing up an Oklahoma kid, it's got to be probably Bedlam. And I thankfully can say that my Bedlam record is as good, if not better than most. The fact that I went 2-3 against Oklahoma. So it's hard not to say Bedlam, even though, we played in some great games. My last game being, at the Sugar Bowl against Ole Miss. That one didn't turn out the way we wanted either. But from that season, I could pick probably quite a few, like Iowa State up there on the road. The way we came back in that game and won that one was a special one. So I'd probably have to say Bedlam my junior year. And obviously it was great my freshman year winning too, but I was on the sidelines. You said it earlier, I was redshirted, so I had a first class ticket to that one. But, the one my junior year was pretty special on the road down there. And cause I'll actually never forget walking onto the field, as our captain of that game, going into overtime to do the flip at overtime. When Coach Gundy sent me, he's like, no, we don't need the rest of everybody. You can just go out there and handle it. And I was kind of like, oh, okay. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I got a picture somewhere that somebody sent me, it was, essentially me from the back and looking at the rest of the side of the Oklahoma sideline. And, so that memory for me is really, really special. And the fact that we obviously ended up winning that game, which was an all-time classic game. And we still want Bob to punt it again and the whole thing as many times as he'll punt it to us. So anyway, yeah, it's probably pretty hard to really overlook Bedlam as one of the tops.
Yeah, I always like those Stoops did it again or Oops did it again shirt, or punted again, Bob. Those are still making the rounds, I think, in the workout rooms around Stillwater for sure. At least I hope they are. Or you did, you're talking about that junior season a little bit. You did receive the Thurman Thomas Award. I got to be honest, when I was looking up, information about you here and doing a little bit of research for the podcast, I wasn't as aware that is the presented by the OSU coaches, the team's offensive MVP, and that's what you got in 2014. Can you kind of explain to us as here as fans in the audience what that award means to the players when it's given out by the coaching staff.
Yeah. At the time, I didn't know I was getting it. And I was very, very surprised, to be honest. And I do, getting it that year and the next year, I split it with James the next year, which still blows my mind that they did that. I was like, yeah, here's a clear cut. I feel like I got it out of sympathy a little bit. You know what I mean? I was like, I have no idea why I'm getting this thing. But I think it was, for myself, it meant a lot for sure. And to the players, I didn't really know much about the award before that, to be honest. But when the fact that it was chosen by the coaches, I think at that time in my career, I tried to be a little more vocal and kind of a leader, at least of the receiver room, and and kind of try to lead a little more by example and all those kind of things. And so, obviously the guys that were a lot more talented around me than I ever was. So I had to do things a little different to, make my situation work. But fortunately I had a great coach and I had great teammates, and that's ultimately what it goes down to, is the fact that I had those guys around me and I was just fortunate to be in a situation. So when I got that award, those years it was super humbling for sure. I did not feel like I deserved it at all. And, as far as, what it means just to get that with the other guys that were, on that team at that time it was special. I definitely still have those, and those are kind of, cherished items of mine, if you will.
Yeah, gotta be. What's kind of the toughest stadium to play in, and besides Boone Pickens? I mean, Boone Pickens is obvious, right? But like toughest away stadium you went to, or toughest environment you went out to. What can you say about that?
Yeah, to this day, I say again, so my freshman year I didn't play, but I was traveling early in that season. I think Texas A&M is absolutely insane. Me and J.W. Walsh still tell the story to this day of when that kickoff happened to start that game. Him and I were standing shoulder to shoulder right next to each other. I'm standing there looking at him, talking to him. He's looking out on the field and he has no idea that I'm talking to him. And then I kind of like hit him on the shoulder and, got his attention, whatever. And he didn't hear a word that I said. And I mean, we were super close to each other, obviously. So, and it was really cool. That game was pretty memorable, and the fact that we got down, came back in the second half, so we got to hear it at its loudest point in the first half probably, and then in the second half, you could hear a pin drop at times in that place. So that was before they did their renovations, but they were still holding a ton of fans in that place, and it was they were rowdy, to say the least. And when they get to rocking and doing their swaying, that's a pretty cool atmosphere. So definitely played in some good ones, but I would have to give A&M the edge as far as just the rowdiness of places that I've ever heard.
I mean, that's the year we beat several Oklahoma State, Oklahoma State that year beat several NFL quarterbacks. I know Whedon goes, but, beat Ryan Tannehill, beat Nick Foles, Arizona, et cetera. So that's one heck of a great year to recall. I want to also ask about your kind of game day routine. Did you have like a key song you went to play before the game, kind of like a routine that you went into more or less, with like a game day meal or something that was specific to you?
No, I like to say that I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious. And so I didn't really have the meal. Our meals, the things that they gave us, you get kind of the standard thing before every game, whether it's home or away. And so meal wise, no, I couldn't eat a ton before games, so I had to keep it pretty light and pretty basic. And then, music and that, I listen to music, but it changed. I don't know, whatever was popular. Hell, I think Justin Bieber came out with a big album in 2015. I listen to that sometimes, because sometimes I like being a little more calm, and I like some different type of music. So I remember guys giving me crap about liking some J Beebs, and I was like, I don't care, whatever. There's some good tunes on there. So anyway, sometimes it was rap, sometimes it was rock, maybe country. That switched up for me. But the only real routine I had was before the game on the field, when I did my own little, making sure I caught a certain number of balls, did some toe taps, stuck my foot in the ground to get used to the turf in certain ways. And so that was really my only true routine, man. But like I said, not a ton of make sure I got to do this or do that, so it was nothing real hardcore for myself.
Gotcha. And then I didn't prep you for this question, but I just got to ask, your number 13, that's Josh Field's number, that was the number growing up for him, right? So why the number 13? Was it because lifelong Oklahoma State guy and Josh Fields, or what goes into that number?
No, to this day, me and Josh have gotten a lot closer lately, and we have kind of a weird family mutual connection. But recently, in the last few months, him and I actually just played golf with him last week, and I wish I could say for my sake and for his that I wore 13 for him, but it wasn't. I was actually number 6 early when I first got to Oklahoma State. And then when I was the punt returner, I was starting at punt returner my redshirt freshman year. And I had a jersey conflict with a teammate, and he was number 6. So I had to switch. And the options at that time, when you're already, you're into the season, the options are pretty limited on what you can choose. And that was probably just one of the lowest digits, honestly, they had, and I went with it. And I knew there was a couple receivers in the NFL that I had watched at that time that were wearing 13, so I just rolled with that, to be honest. There was nothing that spectacular about it, or nothing superstitious about it at all, but I didn't even think about that. Now that's pretty cool. I can talk to Josh about that. Yeah, I'll give him a little hype and tell him I chose it because of him. That's good advice from you right there.
Oh, well, thank you. I'll take my 1% of credit on that one, if that. I also want to ask you, you caught passes from several different, just great Oklahoma State quarterbacks, and of course also Matt Ryan of the Falcons as well too. I'm watching that, when you're the Falcons intern and going introducing yourself to people and stuff like that. It's still up today. If anyone wants to go watch it, I'll in fact, I'll link it below here. It's still pretty great, but it was like the favorite is a tough term here, but the guy who threw the best, ball that came into your hand perfectly or whatever. I mean, great. I'm talking about NFL quarterback after quarterback, when it's Rudolph and Whedon and of course Matt Ryan, but did you have a favorite, or was there kind of like a, hey, this guy threw the best ball or anything like that?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. I don't think people probably ask that question enough, not just to me, but to receivers in general. So when you get other receivers on at whatever point, that's something you should keep this question in your back pocket for sure, because it's a good one. And I think probably every receiver will probably answer it a little bit different, even if they've caught from the same quarterbacks, because everybody has their own preference, just like anything else in life or in sports. But for me, I have to, first off, I'll say the first ball that was ever thrown to me from Brandon Whedon in a practice, it jammed my finger up pretty bad. So Brandon threw, obviously could spin it through a great ball, but that always stuck with me. It's like, oh, welcome to playing receiver at the Division I level. But catching balls from Matt Ryan was cool. I can't say he always threw, in my opinion. Sorry, Matt, if you ever hear this, which I know you won't, but I can't say at times I thought he threw the most receiver friendly balls. And so, which to me, being a receiver, that's a big deal. And when I look back at things now, and when I'm coaching, whatever position it might be nowadays, throwing a catchable ball is a big deal to me. So to all the quarterbacks out there that ever hear this, make sure you're throwing catchable balls to receivers. When you're close to them, you don't have to throw the old heater right down the middle. The ball can get there in a variety of ways. So, but I do say I got to give the edge to Mason Rudolph on this one. I caught a lot of passes from him, obviously later in the career, and Mason had that ability to throw the catchable ball. So that's who I'd give that to, especially when he was throwing the ball over the middle. On some of the shorter routes and things we did, he had a way of putting a ball into a tight window, but making sure it wasn't the heater. It wasn't a fastball. It was still really, really catchable. So, I got to give that edge to Rudy on that one. That's, it's a great quality to have as a quarterback, to throw catchable balls to your wideouts. So.
I got to say, one of the things I remember from working for the Chargers, granted I was not working with the player personnel, but one of the things I would hear from fans and others was Justin Herbert can throw a ball really fast, but is it catchable? So I'm glad to hear it's at least a decent question to ask here. So can you kind of tell us what you're up to today here with the Huddle Up podcast and who your co-host is, and you're having Kasey Dunn on, you're having former Colts, players on and stuff like that. But talk to us a little more about your podcast you're doing now.
Yeah, man, fired up for an episode we're going to be shooting this week with Charlie Johnson, former Oklahoma State Cowboy and Super Bowl champ with the Indianapolis Colts. So that should be a good episode. But yeah, man, the Huddle Up podcast has been a blast. We put episodes out about once a week. Every now and then we might go one more. And we try to keep it loose, to be honest. The host is Drew England, is a guy I met earlier this year. Him and I, when we met, we just kind of hit it off as far as talking sports, and we were just bouncing things off of each other. We had a lot of mutual connections, and then he asked me to come on his show as a guest, and I had a lot of fun. We were just talking shop, and then he hit me up after that and said, what would you think about coming on and maybe being a co-host with me? Because he said he'd kind of been possibly, throwing around the idea of having a co-host, and so I said, why not? I had enough fun on there the first time. We got J.W. Walsh on there, a good friend of mine, soon after that. And then from that time, Drew enjoyed it and I enjoyed it. And we just kind of kept rolling. And here we are now, however many months in. And you said, Kasey Dunn on the podcast was a really fun one, man. And just seeing him kind of lighten up a little bit. And then he got to his serious modes at time. He hit us with a little bit of everything. So I'm having a blast doing it, man. I never thought it's something that I would do, to be honest with you. And I'm learning along the way and getting it. Hell, it helps me keep up with some, old friends, old coaches, things of that nature. So, it's been a blast. I'm grateful to Drew for having me on and asking me to be his co-host for sure. And, we try to keep it light. It's directed more in the football way of conversation, if you will. But we hit everything in the sports world. If there's main topics going on, me personally, I love golf. I'm not any good at it, but I love it. I love following it. And so kudos to you on your name. Super catchy, the CGA Tour, kind of like, so I hope you're a golf guy, because your name just rolls right off the tongue of this thing, man. So kudos to you for that. That's very clever. And I know that's your initials, right?
Yep. My initial. Yeah.
That works perfect. That works perfect. So Anyway, yeah, it's we hit everything in the sports world. It just directed a little more towards football, and we try to keep it light, a little informative, as they would say on the Pat McAfee show, a little comedic informative, if you will, at times. And I think that's a great way to put it. So it's been a fun time, and hopefully we can keep it rolling.
Yeah, well, I definitely love listening to it. I love, hearing you and Drew go at it. Of course, getting on former guys and former coaches. It's just great to hear from an audience perspective and kind of learn a little bit more of the insights as I try to kind of keep my coaching career going, whether it be middle school basketball or football and whatever's next. So I really appreciate you taking the time here, David, and joining the CGA Tour podcast. If you're not already, I will link it here, but go follow at David Glidden or the Huddle Up Pod. I'll link that here below because it's the Huddle Up PD, on X. And really appreciate you joining again. If you're not already, please follow at the CGA Tour, and we'll catch you over again soon.
My name's David Glidden.
Glidden.
Rumor is some people around here don't really know my name yet. Not quite sure, but I think we're going to go inside and put that to the test today. Wait, can I ask you something real quick?
Sure.
Do you by chance know who I am? Know my name, maybe? I think we've been in a couple meetings together. With the Falcons, right?
Yeah.
In Atlanta?
I don't know. I meet so many people. Who are you?
My name's David.
You are...
I'm an intern in the other office, so.
Okay, all right.
I don't think we met either. I just didn't know, it's a lot of names going around here. I'm a new intern, so I was just.
I think I recognize your name. I think I saw it in an email.
Yeah?
A day or two ago, maybe.
Do you by chance know my name?
Yes, I do. Jonathan Babineau, defensive tackle, University of Iowa.
Glidden.
Okay.
So what is it?
Gilden.
Why are you looking at me like that?
You are rambling. What's the deal? You're here as an intern?
Yeah.
For what department?
The wide receivers.
You're full-time?
I am saying, when did you start?
Just like a month ago, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're here for the whole season too?
I sure hope so.
Hey Cowboy fans, today's episode is brought to you by Oakley Burklow, your go-to independent insurance agent and proud OSU alum. Oakley helps with home, auto, life, and business insurance. Working with multiple top-rated insurance companies to find you the right coverage at the right price. Licensed in Oklahoma and Arkansas. Call 918-280-9068 or email oakley.burklow@connectmyinsurance.com. Personal service, honest advice, and a fellow hope helping you protect what matters.